watching Morning at NTV.
Yes, a very good morning. We're glad you're still with us. For those that went with us into the break, this 10th day of April, Easter Monday, and of course a public holiday. We know that those that are still smarting out of Easter festivities might be struggling with a few issues, but we know the morning show here, that is Morning at NTV, is not only just your breakfast show, but your companion. And we want to go into our Kickstarter segment and take a look at the politics of the day, the spin, the lies, and the attempt to, well, redesign some aspects of our country for the better. Now, we come on the backdrop of one of the most disturbing corruption scandals the country has seen. Everything that happens in this country is noteworthy, but there are some that say certain communities have suffered so much to the extent that to again make them suffer more by diverting those resources that are supposed to go to them is not only, no, it's very bad. It lacks, it doesn't give the best possible picture for any Ugandan. Karamoja, that is to speak. The Minister for Karamoja, Mary Goretti Kitutu, is in the coolers after a court decided that diversion of iron sheets was unlawful, was illegal, and was grand corruption. Yesterday in Mbale, that is at St. Andrew's Cathedral, the bishop there, Right Reverend Wilson Nanda, asked the president to pardon Honorable Kitutu, saying she is being sacrificed and others are being left at large. That's a question that we shall be asking. I have two very eminent persons in the studio this morning to help us understand what is at play and offer some perspective on how the nation can go forward. I have Charity Ahimbisiwe, leading political analyst, a commentator. She's also one of the honchos in the NGO world. I also have Siraje Kifampa. I hope I've gotten that right.
Yeah. My name is Chifampa Siraje Nsambu. My name is Chifampa Siraje Nsambu.
Nsambu.
Yes.
All right. Many thanks for joining us.
From the Justice Forum, Jim.
First and foremost, you had to emphasize that.
Yeah.
Why had you dropped it?
There was many times people have so many designations and states of work to the extent that if you begin to want to pay attention to that, you might want to pay attention to everything. I always want to look at the political analyst aspect and political commentator, because that pretty much encompasses just about everything. Before we begin the conversation proper, these festive seasons, the season of Easter, just what's your take on how things are going? You, Siraji, you're Muslim, Ramadan is ongoing, but all these are seasons to help the nation and individuals reflect. And the overlap between the holy month of Ramadan and the Passover is something that should not only pass, it's something that we should pay attention to. How can we use such seasons to reflect?
Thank you so much. Good morning, our viewers, and thank you for hosting me. Once again, allow me to reintroduce myself. My name is Fampa Siraje Nsambu from the Justice Forum. I always have to emphasize that because that is my home in terms of politics.
That's right.
First of all, we are in a period of fasting for the Muslims, and I think it's a time for Muslims to begin reflecting on their lives, on how they are supposed to change, the way how they behave in society, and even to connect with their Creator. So I think this is a very important time, and it coincides with the Easter. It's very unfortunate that we've been seeing incidents of accidents on the roads, the way how people behave on the road while those ones who are going to celebrate Easter, those festivities, they tend to be reckless and as if they don't think that there will be a day after the celebrations. But we always caution people that please be mindful of your life. Life has no spare parts, and we think people should use the Easter festivities to reflect on themselves as individuals and connect to their Creator. That's the message I can say about it.
Okay. Charity, I believe it's pretty much the same message, but your perspective matters too.
Thank you very much, Higenya, and a very good morning to all our viewers. I think for Easter, it's been a good Easter camp season. And from the churches we have had, all the reverends and bishops, for me, I'm from the Anglican faith, and so we have had our reverends, bishops, even the Archbishop, calling on the president to sign the homosexuality bill, the anti-homosexuality bill. But we also had the Archbishop urging people to do mentorship and value growth for communities. We have also heard him talking about the Iron Sheet saga, and the various preachers across also took time, because the head of the Orthodox said they should actually fire all the 22 ministers. They should force them to resign, and new people are put in those offices. And then, of course, you don't see it happening, but he said it. Yeah. So let us hear what they were saying, and then we can gauge and see what works, what can't work. And then we also had the ones who said, look, corruption has taken us very many strides back in terms of service delivery, in terms of who we are as a person. We can no longer now stand in public. We need people who can stand and stand for their values, because there is a close correlation between legitimacy, accountability, and efficiency. Now, once we look at that correlation, then you understand where our leaders in the faith were coming from to make all these statements. But they also made sweeping statements, of course, about the resurrection of Christ and what it means to us, and why we should reflect on it as Christians, and why we should continue to live a Christian life even in the work that we do. And for me, I thought that that is significant, because as Ugandans, we are in this together. You cannot exclude yourself. You might think if there are no social services, it's their issue, let them be there. For us, we shall always find a way around this, but we are in this together. Okay,
Mr. Chifampa, when you speak about your home, that is Justice Forum or Jemba, you fashion yourself as the perfect political animal. And for Uganda, the politics of the day is exactly what is at, you know, the spotlight is on the politics of the day. When you hear prelates, bishops, clerics making all these pleas and appeals, because many times for them they can only appeal, they can only plea to the politicians to be considerate. It's a case of a society that has reached a point where we can't do anything but to simply pray to God that these men and women's conscience can be realigned to purpose, to efficiency, like Charity says. As a politician, what ought to be done and what has gone so wrong? We might think we have an idea, but perhaps we might not.
There is a saying that people usually get leaders that deserve them, or the quality of leadership that you have in a given society is a reflection of the society. So the kind of decadence that has gone on is as a result of the society as a whole, because leaders don't come from a vacuum, they always come from the community. Secondly, for the religious leaders and the clerics always to seek divine intervention in terms of praying to the Almighty to always give wisdom and guidance to the leaders. I think that is commendable, and that's their role. However, we need to look at these religious leaders as people who are so much closer to the community, to the people down there, than the political leaders. Just imagine every Sunday people have to go to church, listen to their religious leaders. They always have a message to deliver to them. On Fridays, the Muslims go to the mosques and the like. So religious leaders also influence society in a certain way. And we've seen them time immemorial. They've always guided society where need be. They've been involved in so many changes. For example, the many revolutions that have taken place, both here in Africa and elsewhere, religious leaders have always been always at the center of such changes and revolutions that have been happening. So their messages should always be taken serious, And for them, they have no political inclination, that they are biased, but they're always fair, and I regard them to be in the middle, looking things from a certain angle. So their messages are always, I think, for a leader who wants to, at least to improve, should always be taken seriously. With regard to JEMA, we cannot say that there is any system, at least below the sun, that is perfect. But we always try to improve ourselves every other day. As JEMA, we feel that we have ideas, if adhered to, we'll be having a more different society than the one that we're having today. So there's so many scandals and the issues that we're talking about. For us, we've addressed them, we've talked about them. If government could allow and borrow a leaf, or those ones who are in power could allow and borrow a leaf from what we say, probably we'll be having a different country compared to what we have today.
Okay. Charity Ahembisiwe. Sometimes the questions to ask about corruption in Uganda and greed might look like a broken record. What do we do next? We have the president here cautioning the public against corruption and greed. And his message is one that, if I may quote, these should not be tolerated and will not be tolerated. We've heard the president say this time and again. Does the president believe that we believe him?
Actually, where I laughed when you asked this question is because on social media, the young people have been saying, no, President Museveni, don't lament like us. For you, you are the commander-in-chief. You're the commander-in-chief. You cannot afford to
can't afford to lament, you know?
So I don't know whether the president has been following the social media tweets. But by all standards, if he was following the social media tweets, then what you're saying is true. I had expected that his Easter message, as much as it was going to talk about corruption, the message for corruption should have been, I have looked at Lesotho, I have looked at Botswana, and I have picked lessons on how they have handled corruption and caused influence on their leadership to transform their societies and improve services.
That's right.
And their ratings have gone up in terms of fighting corruption. And I'm going to pick those lessons and try to apply some of them in Uganda in terms of all the corruption scandals that I have so far unwrapped. And he should have told us, therefore, that URA, this is what I have done with them. In the ministers, in terms of accountability, I've told the DPP to investigate. The report is yet to get to my desk. He should have told us NSSF, after the parliament advised, the way they have advised, for me, I think this is what I'm going to do. In terms of accountability, he needed to have come clean for accountability for these corruption scandals that are happening, rather than make a sweeping statement which he has made over and over. When the first time the saga came out, the Iron Sheet saga, he actually wrote and said, anyone who has touched, smelt, come close, be anywhere, they are going to be crushed. Then the list came out and there were 22 inside his cabinet, and he sat. 22
of 53.
Now, of course, the MPs were how many? The MPs are 32.
No, the whole list is 53 people.
Yes.
And they include 22
cabinet members. The rest are MPs. And most of them are NRM leaning. So when he sat down and he looked at the list, those who had smelt, come close, and they were supposed to have been crushed and fired, as he had written, because those were his words. And now here he's repeating bits of it. I think he should, beyond just saying, he should actually act. And after he has acted, he should come to remind us that, okay, this is what I have done for this scandal. Since I have dealt with this one I'm going to deal with it this way. Or if he's not going to tell us how he's going to deal with it, we need to have accountability coming from the president. When these statements here are just...
Interesting there. And I would like to just throw this to Mr. Chifampa. The president is not a lone actor, and by being president he cannot circumvent the law or the processes of government and the running of the state. One would give the president the benefit of the doubt in this particular case of the theft of iron sheets, that a minister who is responsible for the disbursement has already been found to appear before a court of law
And
is now under remand, and the process will go on. Isn't that President working?
Okay, before I come to that, we should look at the history of President Museveni with regards to corruption.
Okay.
To put that in perspective, by the way, it is President Museveni who told the IGG that please do not be hard on thieves, because if you get hard on them, they will take the money out of this country. The good thing is that when they steal the money, they invest it here.
They invest it here.
Secondly, it is President Museveni who wrote a letter of recent telling the speaker that please do not tell the police or the army men or whatever, the people in uniform for the army to disclose their wealth.
Disclose their wealth.
Because that will bring political insecurity, it will bring insecurity in the country. How does the wealth of an officer, an army officer, has to do with the insecurity if he discloses it to the IGG? It is President Museveni who has been on record that whenever there is a scandal like this, he invites the MPs and the ministers to Kyankwanzi to sanitize the situation. When someone is found, look at the Temangalo scandals where Mama Mbabas was involved, the NSSF selling of land, their properties and the like. It is President Museveni who comes to defend these people who
describe it as sanitizing.
Who comes to sanitize it whenever they are found in such scandals.
Of words is
listen, there was a letter that was published by the Daily Monitor, written by the former IGG Justice Mulyagonja, and she said that whenever she was going against the thieves, chasing them, they would go and hide behind the chair of the president. You understand? So when someone hides behind the chair of a president, then you have nothing to do with that person, because the president is, you're like fighting the president himself. So talking about corruption, that they should not be tolerated, I think President Museveni is playing a mind game. Let me give you an example. In the 10th Parliament, there was it in the 9th Parliament, I think, there was Honorable Sam Singwa from Machinda East. This guy was bringing a private member's bill where he said that whoever is involved and convicted by courts of law in corruption, in any corruption case, we should not only arrest that person, but government should confiscate all his properties, sell them so that they can return the money that he stole. I'm telling you, this bill did not get any support from government. You know, when bills are brought, you go get a statement of financial whatever implication. Then a cabinet adopts it, and then it is brought on the floor of the parliament. I'm telling you, after realizing that majority of the people within government will fall prey to this case, to this law, it did not receive any support. Even yet the member who was bringing it was a member of the NRM. It did not receive support. So likewise, the president will tell you that corruption should not be tolerated. You know, one time he said that I'm always looking for the right people, but whoever I get wrong people. Then the question would be, why should you always be getting the wrong people? Uganda is, you mean that there is a scarcity in Uganda of right people that should be in those positions? So when you see flies flying around you, you get to know that the smell is coming from you, not from elsewhere.
That's interesting there. But of course, it's an analogy that we are very familiar with. He speaks about the fact that there are a lot of people who can be employed, and I'm sure, Mr. Siraj Fampa, you can make a very good minister, just like you would, Charity Ahembisiwe. The only pitfall for the average Ugandan is the tendency to begin to think in a silo mentality the moment you get the job. You all of a sudden have things acting upon you, interests acting upon you, and you find yourself having to act in a certain way. Apparently, that is the notion we are given. President Museveni appointed a litany of ministers female, and many people looked at it as an attempt to tell society that, hey, if the men are rampant when it comes to management of resources, let's have women manage some of these top positions and then see what happens. There is a general understanding that women are more disciplined when it comes to managing resources and money. Have they failed the president?
Again, that is a sexist statement, but
no, I'm asking you.
Yes, I know, and it's a genuine comment I have also seen from the public, and it's true. first the disappointment was that the women were the majority on that list. And they were the leaders. And our sister is in the coolers. She's the one who is representing the biggest line. But because she was directly in charge of that ministry.
Yeah.
But I wanted us to look at governance as a whole, because you are saying no matter who he picks and puts there, you will suffer the same problems that anybody has suffered. And that is why even when he thought, let me eliminate the men, I put the women, he has still faced the same problem.
The same problem.
If you look at governance, and this is what we have been saying as civil society, as NGOs for a very long time, and governance pundits have said, governance, we have a problem on our governance spectrum. If you're looking at governance, 3 key things have to happen. 1, look at the politics, the health of the politics. Is it good or is it bad? Generally, we do not have a healthy political environment.
That is right.
If you look at Chegegwa and Kunga, who is in hospital right now, you have people from NUP who are in Rubaga Hospital. You have people who have been beaten up for their political affiliations. That is all gauging your political environment. How is the political environment working like? Is there tolerance? Are people understanding systems? Do people know what Article 38 of the Constitution talks about? Governance, and us being involved in that governance. Now, when there is political space for people to hold their leaders accountable, then you push for accountability. Now, once you push for accountability, institutions begin to serve. But the IGG just came out this very week to say, police is one of the most corrupt institutions that we have. So now police is investigating corrupt people when it is corrupt itself. So you are saying the correct scenario. You put me there, no matter how many corrupt people I bring, police will find a way of shielding them and they will go away. So you will be frustrated at your job. So the women, we are not going to reinvent a wheel that has already been created the way it is created. The institutions are not working. The IGG has said the biggest corrupt institution is the police. She said it this week. By the time she is saying the police is corrupt, it's not the only institution. She came and also said the courts were corrupt. So now, if your institutions have a shroud of corruption, then where do you run to? That is what you're asking us. So even when you bring the best woman, good doctorate, like our Dr. Chitutu, you saw her education levels, you've seen the experience she had, and she still has. But this is where she's ended up because of a system. And I agree with you. A system exists.
Let me just skip on that question of which ideally speaks to conscience and people's conscience. When you look at what Dr. Kitutu did, all the beneficiaries of the iron sheets have categorically stated that they never asked her for the iron sheets. Meaning, Madame Chitutu, Dr. Chitutu, sat on her own volition and elected who gets the iron sheets. Meaning perhaps there is a culture within cabinet of disbursing some items when they are available. I have a bit of oil, I have cement, so please get yourself some. As a good doctor, and you may seem to suggest that other aspects or factors were acting upon her, but this is something of, she elected to decide, Charity, Chris, Siraje, please receive some iron sheets. What is your comment on that?
You see, when she took long to talk, Dr. Chitutu, and even when she was taken to police, she did not talk. I think one of the things she came out and mentioned was that I had not got proper direction on how...
on what to say or how to disburse?
On how to disburse the iron sheets. She said, I did not get proper guidance. That was the first statement she made before the investigations went into high gear. Now, when you look at the statement, I did not get proper instruction. Proper guidance. Where was she supposed to be getting this proper guidance? That is the first question you ask yourself. Who was supposed to be giving this proper guidance? It means it has been a culture. Somebody gives proper guidance on who is supposed to receive. Where there are some people who were supposed to have been on that list and were aggrieved, and they were the whistleblowers this time, and they sit in a very good place. So these are the questions for us as political analysts to think about. What was it that she needed guidance about? She is a minister. She has a JD. A JD is a job description. Yes.
Yeah.
And it is clearly cut.
The resources were within the aegis of the Karamoja Community Empowerment Program.
Exactly.
What kind of guidance did she expect from anybody else?
Exactly, but that is the statement she made. She said, I now understand I got some decisions wrong for lack of proper guidance. So who was supposed to give guidance
When
to the
we talk
minister?
about guidance, I've been guided by the producer that we go for a break. So after that, this conversation will continue. Do stay with us. The lies and the revelations, the scandals, how they are dealt with, but who is who in any one scandal. Right now, what is trending is Dr. Kitutu and, of course, the Iron Sheet scandal. And many questions are being asked. Those who are beneficiaries of the Iron Sheets are threatening to sue Dr. Kitutu on their own, meaning the minister is yet to face a lot more lawsuits. Some of those, including the Minister for Finance, are asking the question, I didn't ask for iron sheets. How did they find their way to my home? You know, and that is a legal question, perhaps, that our land friends will help us when that finally comes through. But let me return to my guests, Charity Ahibisibe and Siraji Chifampa Nsambo. Yes. I want to begin with Siraji. There is an interesting analogy, something you alluded to, that perhaps we are working within a greater context of things we might not even understand. Many times we are told as journalists that what we probe by way of seeking facts, clarification, is but just a minute proportion of what is happening under the table.
It's just a tip of the iceberg.
The corruption, the graft moves from mere mention of corruption to a clandestine campaign to thieve and basically take the nation down. Is that what you're suggesting, given our conversation before we returned on air? Just paint this picture for us.
You know, there are so many questions that are lingering in my mind. First of all, government has got a system, a centralized system, that if Charity here is a minister, or even an LC5 chairperson somewhere.
Should we pray about that, Charity?
Okay,
For becoming a minister.
All right.
I'm giving an example.
Yeah.
That if you are to request for any monies in government, there is a system that you go through. And I'm telling you, everything was centralized to the Minister of Finance, the PA, Gobi. Before he releases money, the PS, Gobi. Before he releases money, he would have tracked everything that you've written about or you've submitted about that money. The 29 also billion shillings.
It is 39.
The 39 billion shillings that was requested as a supplementary to buy iron sheets, to buy goats, to go and compensate for the warriors in Karamoja, was money that had a system to follow. That when you buy iron sheets, this is how it is supposed to be taken there, who are the people that are supposed to receive it. You understand that kind of system that I'm talking about. Then how come that people that did not request for the iron sheets are receiving phone calls that you have iron sheets here, please send someone to come and pick them? The Minister for Finance, Kasaija, says that he just found them in his compound, that someone brought them and they were given to him. Then there is something that misses the eye that is happening behind. It's a grand scheme that I'm telling you. Secondly, I think, you know, we can always talk about the flaws of President Museveni as an individual. But we should always accept that President Museveni is a refined political scientist in this country, of our generation. He knows how to play his cards. To come out as the most clean person that the country has ever seen. But I'm telling you, there is nothing that happens, at least within the confines of Uganda, where President Museveni doesn't know what is happening here and there.
Effectively remove the veil on this accusation and say President Museveni is responsible for the iron sheets.
President Museveni is aware of what happened and why it happened on these iron sheets, I'm telling you. Why do I say so? Why
your
do I say
national television
Yeah, but
accusing the president.
No, I'm
Do
saying...
you have evidence to back these allegations?
I'm saying President Museveni must be knowing this. Why do I say so? I have to justify this. That there is nothing that happens in cabinet. There is nothing the Prime Minister can do without the President knowing. Because I saw the Prime Minister explaining this, that every Monday they have a cabinet meeting. On Tuesday they make follow-up meetings on who is assigning responsibilities. This was passed in the cabinet. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. The same thing happened to these iron sheets. You understand? Secondly, why of all the scandals that we had in this country, the other day the IGG made a report that we lose 10 trillion shillings every financial year, taxpayers' money, in corruption scandals like these ones. But we are talking about the iron sheets. Even if you added them all, the total cannot even go to 1 billion shillings. Because when you look at the quality of the iron sheets that we're talking about, each one can go for around 31,000 shillings. If someone took something like 300 iron sheets, that means that is 9.3 million shillings, for sure. Why should we be focusing on this? And yet there are bigger scandals where trillions and trillions of shillings are disappearing. There is something that is behind there. I can feel it. That there are people that they want to offload. The president wants to offload, but there is no way he can offload them without first embarrassing them in the public. And by the time he offloads them, everyone will be satisfied and say, you had to do it earlier. That
is effectively describing Honorable Chitutu as low-value cargo on a goods ship at high seas. That's what I'm saying.
And to think about her as low-value cargo when she's a doctor, it is sad. Again, it's really sad that you end up becoming low-value cargo. I think that in terms of what he is talking about, you see.
And by the way, before anybody out there misunderstands our reference to low-value cargo, it's simply an analogy. When you are at sea and the boat is sinking, and you need some things to lose, either to pay the price for you reaching the shores, you drop them off. Absolutely do not reach the point of thinking, oh my God, Chris has just described a minister as low-value cargo. It's an analogy, no doubt about that.
Oh, and there is a cartoon to that effect from Dr. Spire, Sentongo. So yeah, you can always follow up that cartoon.
Yeah.
Now, Chris, I was telling you that, you see, when you look at the question of governance, which I tried to explain to you about, two factors play out always. The public use of power and the public use of resources. When we talk about public use of power, we see the overhand of military and police, which I have also explained.
Yeah.
When you see those overtly too much power usage, then you know there is a problem in governance. So when you see this accountability and the use of money the way people want, you look at Uganda Revenue Authority. They were saying the other day, still a headline on the Monitor, 32 billion went missing from Uganda breweries.
And a probe has already been rolled out, so you can say there's an attempt to fight corruption.
But our heads are not running after the 32 billion. Remember, the other supplementary budget was of 39 billion. And he has told you an iron sheet is how much?
31,000.
And an iron sheet is bulky. You have to carry. You imagine if you're stealing, how are you putting them in your boot? And then you'll be seen everywhere moving with these iron sheets. So people do not pick pocket change. Why are we running after the pocket change? Because that is where we've been pushed to run. But for me, beyond being pushed to run after pocket change, and we leave the big money out there, and we are not asking for accountability for that big money because it's about public use of resources. For me, I'm saying, one, there were issues with that 39 billion. Why would you buy goats that ended up dying? If we had picked this money let's just assume we did only one thing, picked the 39 billion supplementary budget and put it in SMEs, small medium enterprises, or we put it in agriculture value chain, because that's where the majority of Ugandans are. Would we have had a bigger negation in terms of capital gain and change on our economic spectrum than it is now? And those are the questions we expected the president's speech to address. He should have been saying, now I am demanding that whoever has those iron sheets brings them back. We saw the Prime Minister saying they should bring back the iron sheets. We only have one person who has brought back, the Speaker. Why are all the other people who are claiming they are even going to sue Kitutu, why aren't they bringing back the iron sheets? First, be clean. Make your hands clean. Okay, they came, they arrived, you didn't know how they got into your compound. Bring back the iron sheets. They are. Yes, bring them back. First, bring them back to the Prime Minister's office. You're queued in that you've brought back the iron sheets. But they are saying, when I bring them back, they will steal them again. Somebody else will take them. So what? For us now, what we want, bring them, we get them into the system, and then we ferry them to Karamoja. I think that would be fair. If not, can government come up with a system? The president is commander-in-chief. Can he come up with a system and say, I want all the iron sheets in my warehouse at State House, and I will deliver them to Karamoja myself? Because he can. He has the anti-corruption unit in State House. Let him pick the iron sheets and take them to Karamoja. Then the goats, let's get accountability. How many lived? How many have died? How many? Because even the goats, we have not asked big questions about the goats. And the Karamojons are still dying over hunger. So Kitutu is in the coolers. Has it stopped? Are they still miserable? Is their issue solved? Do we always have corruption in the Prime Minister's office? Is it going to continue? These are the bigger questions for us to deal with.
There is a lot when you try to understand this whole thing and how exactly it happens. And just yesterday, as Easter sermons were rolling, some prelates were, of course, condemning the corruption. Others were asking, just like you have asked people to bring the iron sheets back. But there was the case of Right Reverend Wilson Nanda of Mbale, the Bishop of Mbale Diocese. He was very passionate, saying Dr. Kitutu is being sacrificed and the rest are being let to go free. And this speaks to a society that condemns acts of corruption, but is again quick to sympathize with the corrupt. Where do we go from here? Because at the end of the day, it's a case of shooting ourselves in the foot. You would expect people to depart from the proximity of emotions with Dr. Kitutu because she comes from Mbale, and then simply say, let the law take its course, because we want to trust the law.
First of all, corruption is the glue that holds this government together.
Okay.
Without corruption, this government wouldn't be here.
That's interesting.
In 2005, when President Museveni found himself in a situation that he could not stand beyond the 2 terms, what did he do to the parliament? He had to bribe the members of parliament so that they can remove the term limits in the constitution. That's why he's still here. In 2017, when the age limit was up, what did he do? Member of parliament give them money so that they can remove the age limit in the constitution. So corruption has become part of government, has become part of the society, that even when someone is caught in the wrong, his own people will be the first people to raise up in arms. Look what happened to Mike Mukura when he was arrested. The UTSOs came and demonstrated in Luzira that you're witch hunting our man. Jim Muhwezi, about the Chogam scandal, he was taken to Luzira. And I'm telling you, the Bachiga came all the way from Kabale and Rukunjiri. And they were saying that the president is targeting their son. Kaihura, when he was taken to the military barracks, the president went to Chigezi area, and people were saying that, please, President Museveni, pardon our son. So corruption has become part of the Ugandan fiber. That Ugandans, even because, I'm telling you, even right from home, if you look at the house, in the home, people have to steal water, people have to steal electricity, people have to do all things of, you cannot imagine So it has become part of us, of society, and that's why even when someone is caught and is subjected to the law, his own people will say that he's being targeted. So I don't agree with the bishop. It's true. Dr. Kitutu is a daughter of your land. He's from your area. But let her go through the legal processes. Then we see how it concludes. Because someone is always presumed to be innocent.
Because, by the way, she has not been convicted. She's simply on remand, and the process is ongoing. She might go scot-free.
So that's what I'm saying.
The facts might reveal that she was actually acting, as Charity says.
So I'm saying that
on some guidelines.
Yeah, she's someone who is not convicted. She has not been heard in courts of law that there is a hearing, a fair hearing, where she has failed to defend herself. Let the law takes its own course. Okay,
let's shift this conversation and take it away from the state of the politicians and look at the quality of leadership in the country, because politicians are also leaders. But then there is a whole set of people who are not politicians, but leaders at various stages of our lives, from the local council to the parishes, to the divisions. We all have leaders, and there seems to be a crisis of leadership. And when you see this crop up to national level, and like you say, looking at the home itself, I won't go into the home because that is a whole another can of worms and a discussion for another day. But should there be a specific set of requirements for leaders and leadership in this country, Charity, and how can it be enforced? If, for example, others will claim we need leaders who are degree holders because they assume by holding a degree you have reached a certain threshold of ability to govern or to administer or to understand people and thereby improve the way they do work. Others will say, I think our leaders must be religious leaning. There's a whole lot of factors to consider. The crisis of leadership, how do we deal with this as a country?
And I think you ask a very, very legitimate question. It's a big question. You see, Chris, systems were not set up just for the sake of setting them up. When you're studying governance, politics, and the law, one of the things that you see is you look at institutions, the way they are run, and where you have blueprint of those institutions, even at local council level, that when you're an LC1 chairman, you're required to have minutes
that is right.
to your to your meetings.
The meetings, yeah.
Such that they are documented.
Another person who comes after you can look through them,
can follow and also understand how you move from what was done before. NGOs are required to submit their books of account at the end of every year, whether you got funding or you didn't get funding. Just tell us you got zero funding and this is how you run your activities, maybe from a sustainability base. So we have an idea. We know what are you doing. And you're supposed to produce a board report. Your board should have sat, should have known how is the organization going, the health of the organization. So leaders cannot operate in a vacuum. Leaders operate in a system. Even when you're a school prefect at school, there is a system, there's a school system.
That is right.
So there are boys and girls, there is this, the school rules, we wake up at 7, at 8, because there's a system. So the first thing to do is to cure the institutions. And then we deal with the leaders. We might not be having a problem with the leaders per se. The leaders might be good. Like you have just stated very well, this is a doctor. Thinks about the processes and knows what is required of them as a doctor, but is coming out to make a statement, I didn't get proper guidance. From where? According to your job description, you're the head of this, and we expect that you are in charge of the processes here. So what are you trying to say which we don't know that you are saying? So maybe the real problem is that we need the institutions to function independently and to function credibly, that you know that when I go to police and report, my phone was stolen, and the police is going to investigate it, he will bring back the phone. The other day, a friend of mine was telling me, I went to police, they stole my phone, 300,000. They asked me to go to follow up the thief. But they told me it is a 50-50. He had bought the phone at 300,000. Now you go to police, they tell you to investigate for the phone is 300,000. And we are not sure whether you will get the phone back or you won't get the phone. And this is the reality. This is what is happening in this country. If you have such things happening to you, it means go back, check your systems. But for you to build those systems, again, back to your question, we have a leadership crisis. So we need to do refresher courses. We need to think, to learn from other jurisdictions. What did they do? They did not go begging like the bishop, begging that release this thief or release this person who has abused office, because this person is not yet a thief. Kitutu is not yet a thief. The courts have not pronounced that. The courts have also not pronounced abuse of office. They haven't yet. The process is still ongoing. So the bishop has jumped the gun. We need due diligence. I also want to urge the government that they go back for the storekeepers at the Prime Minister's office. That is a leadership question. In terms of leadership, yes, for vicarious liability, they were acting on behalf of their boss, but
as an enormous power acting on a store officer to bring them.
But the store officer, did you do the due diligence? You just followed our WhatsApp instruction. Is that due diligence in terms of government and public systems? Is that what you're required to do as a public servant? You're supposed to ask questions. That is why you're there. You say, okay, but I've just got this thing on WhatsApp. Can you send an email? Do you know you go to systems and people tell you, send an email? When you're doing accountability for the USAID, for example, they'll give you 20 billion shillings. And then they will say, send this document, send this document, send this document, send this document.
Do you genuinely think that in Uganda's public service space, a store officer who receives the WhatsApp instruction
from a minister
can shoot back and ask the minister, please send an email?
I honestly think that they can sit on their computer to clear their back. They can sit on their computer. They will follow the instruction from the minister on WhatsApp, but they will sit on their computer, send an email and copy many other bosses whom the minister works with and say, I will do this as instructed on WhatsApp. However, the better deal would have been if an email had been sent and you leave it at that. If you're fired the next day,
when
public
the standing
service
protocol for your job description as a public servant clearly states how and when you take on instructions, and you write an email?
Yes. You write an email to clean yourself. You need to.
I do not want to go that side. Because,
where do you want to go?
Because if you give, you know, Charity, when you begin saying that they should even go and cross-check with the storekeepers.
Yes, because the IGG said that the storekeepers, after they saw that the iron sheets were making waves, they also decided to dip their fingers. The IGG said these words. If the IGG said these words, has there been due diligence?
Okay. I do not want to go that side, because you would have given an escape route for the ministers, and they will always you will find the storekeepers in coolers, and the ministers will go scot-free. But I'm going back to the question that you said, that the leadership crisis. Do we have leaders? What should we do to have proper leaders in proper positions?
Tell us about GEMA's leadership production line.
Before I come to that, but let me say this. Mao Zedong, the godfather of China, did not have to look for people with degrees to make China what it is today. Likewise, Lee Kuan Yew of Singapore, and many other great leaders that have transformed their countries or their societies. You know, the issue is all about the political will. If there is the political will in this country to make this country function properly, things will change, and you will wonder how they've changed overnight. But I'm telling you, for as long as there is no political will for things to function properly, we shall always talk about the policies, and I'm telling you, Uganda has the best policies on their bookshelves, I'm telling you. We've benchmarked with so many countries and societies and parliaments and whatever systems. Ours are almost the same. But is there the political will for the leaders that are in power, like President Museveni in particular. That's the person that I'm talking about. If there is the political will to fight corruption, to fight abuse of offices, abuse of power, and many other things, if President Museveni wakes up one day and says, this is what I want, this country will change. But for as long as he doesn't have that will, you will have doctors like Dr. Kitutu, and they will end up the way how they are. You will bring professors and put them into offices, and things will remain the way they are. You will bring the fishermen, like he said that he's a cabinet of fishermen, and things will be the same. Why? There is no political will. The day President Museveni will wake up and say that I want to put an end to the corruption in my government, you will never see any other minister eating, or any other public servant eating government funds. But for as long as he enjoys the game, we shall still have the same system. We shall still have the same problems that we're having today. So leadership per se is all about attitude. If the attitude is negative, you will always have negative results. So that's what we're having today. So as JEMA, we have the M in our acrimony. J-E-E-M-A, JEMA. Justice, economic revitalization, education, morals, that M. Morals and African unity. So the things that you're seeing today, these are moral questions that have not been answered in this country. Because just imagine, if you're really a moral person, you see the only region in this country where the children are on the streets of this of Kampala, running after every car that passes by, begging. You've seen, there is footage that has been put on the screens here, and you've seen the poverty that is in Karamoja. People walking barefooted, people walking naked. It's the only region that you can talk about in Uganda where people are in their poverty, whatever situations. But if you're a moral person, you cannot accept to take those iron sheets. And that's what JEMA talks about, the morality. If we lack morals in this country, we shall have similar problems. Now, you look at those people, the way how they are struggling just to get something to eat. And you take the iron sheets? So these are moral questions that have not been answered in this country.
Charity, morality is a very fluid and expansive concept to even begin to attempt to dissect as either a cause, that is immorality for that matter, or a solution, improvements in morality. You are in the civil service, and you are not immune to challenges that border on vices like misuse of resources. And but when you talk about, earlier you spoke about, was it Botswana?
Yes,
yeah,
Botswana
nations
and Lesotho.
Yes, nations that have been able to roll out a way of doing things, especially streamlining public service, that can be benchmarked. We have very fine blueprints, like Siraje Chifampa says. Are we a society that doesn't want to benchmark? Are we saying no one has gone to some of these countries and wanted to at least tell us, you know what, this is how things are happening here, and we can also copy and roll this out? So
it's not a moral question.
It is not?
I don't think it's a moral question, because look at the United States. Do they promote morals anymore? They gave up on morals several years ago. They no longer have morality. But do they have systems? Are systems working for them? Have they recently indicted a president who even left presidency, and he right now has to face the law over issues they have raised? So they have systems that are in place. It wasn't just a question of morals, but it's a question of balancing morals, values, and the system, the law. For me, I think it's more of a question of a law, because laws are created to manage society. Why do we have laws that we do not want to pay attention to as a country? Why don't we ever want to try our constitution? Why don't we ever want to allow systems to happen? Why don't we ever want due diligence to happen? We know these things are supposed to happen the way they are, and we are working behind tables. No, we should not work behind tables. We should follow systems as they are. Stick to the creed. Why do people go to classes of public administration and management? They go to classes of public administration and management to learn how to publicly administer and manage public resources. So you have learned how to manage public resources, writing accountability forms for them, requesting, making formal requests for them, filing these things, referring to them for a reason that posterity is kept, but also there is a record to refer to.
Okay.
So I think beyond balancing the moral question, systems and systems and systems.
Triple word there. Systems, systems, systems. Time now for a short break. When we return, this conversation continues, and I'll be asking, what is the role of poverty in corruption? Because at the end of the day, many people seem to be simply securing the meal for the next day. Stay with us.
At NTV.
And Kickstarter is the segment. We are looking at what is no doubt a question that continues to disturb Ugandans. Corruption, theft, graft, leadership crisis. All those things are in some kind of a cocktail. Some say the solutions are again embedded within the societies that we live in, the communities rather, and that we can do a lot to ensure that we refine things like governance and systems. Before we came back on air, the conversation behind the scenes was about securing the future. So many themes have come. You've had themes that border on that. But one guest was describing the fact that when the National Resistance Movement came into power in 1986, the fighters, and we refer to them as that because that's what they were at the time, the fighters were hungry, the fighters needed food, the fighters needed resources because they were broke. Some of them were able to, well, make themselves better and secure the future not only of their children, but grandchildren. There are elements within society that are saying it has gone on for too long, and we are wondering what exactly now is being secured by the lot of 1986. That is an argument. So let me throw it to the political commentators and analysts because I can't make my mind around it. Charity Ahimbesigwe, you heard before we returned on air what Siraje Chifampa spoke about, and it's very poignant when you look at the fact that so many public servants, especially the ones that are leaning with the National Resistance Movement, have been able to do things for themselves. No doubt about that. We cannot put a finger to exactly what and where, but there is a good life. Are they securing for generation 7, so to speak, or we should also find our way of securing our own future?
Now, for me, I'm happy with answering that question via what the president said. They are greedy. And yeah, he said they are greedy, and they are parasites, and they are the reason why we have
they are careerists.
Yes, they are careerist politicians, and they are the reasons why we are having many people continue to wallow in poverty. So I want to think about them like that. I want to think about them like as career politicians. They have learned how to, they're jacks of all trade. They know how to play around with it to get more and more wealth, eat more, exclude others. You know, corruption does exclude. It causes increased oppression to the bigger masses of people. You can't go to a hospital, but you do go to these hospitals here. The other day, your minister was taken to Kambuga Hospital, and he was flown away from there to Kampala. Chris, you know,
Chris Baryomunsi, yeah.
He couldn't sleep there even one night. He had to be flown to a hospital in Kampala. But think about my people there who have no way of coming in a chopper. For them, where do they sleep?
Not even an ambulance.
They sleep in that very hospital. Then they put facilities even in Kabale, and they can't use the facilities. They are moving on foot to look for the nearest health center, and these career politicians do not give a damn as long as they can drive their big Porsche cars. They have fuel assured for them. Their children are flying out. They are in international schools, and when I was putting one on the spot over their children being in international schools and others studying in national schools, said, you're not going to pinpoint at us. It's not our problem that our children go to international schools. Do you see? So this is it. Greed. That is what I can say.
Interesting there. Siraje Chifampa. Careerist politicians are surrounding the president. Is it enough to say the president is surrounded by people who are now too powerful, more powerful than him perhaps? Is he under hostage? Is he being held hostage?
Okay, before that, I was telling you something in the break.
Yeah.
That it was very understandable in 1986 when these guys had just captured power, that they were angry. They were hungry for, is it hungry for everything?
Hungry.
And it was understandable. 37 years down the road, you cannot give that excuse.
Understandable up to what point?
Oh, whatever, maybe 3, 4, 5 years when they've just captured power. But 37 years down the road, you cannot give that excuse of poverty or whatever. Today, if you just made something around Kampala, and you see the skyscrapers that are coming up in Kampala, and just said that everyone should go and stand on his building that he owns in Kampala. There are people that you'll have to cut into so many pieces so that each building can get a piece of him. You understand? That you will see businessmen in front as clones, but behind there are politicians that are owning those businesses, those whatever skyscrapers and buildings that you're seeing.
Which within the workings of an economy, anybody can own so much.
It's okay. This is the capitalist kind of system that we are in. If only if you got that wealth through proper channels and through rightful means. But today we are talking about people who are eating money that is supposed to build hospitals, that is supposed to take iron sheets for the Karamajongs, that is supposed to build schools and services that are going to help the poor person down there. So the issue of poverty has no correlation in this country with the corruption. That today people are just greedy, they just want to grab everything and just make it for themselves, be it for themselves. So,
and what informs that? What pushes that kind of thinking? Because help us understand.
I was reading a book called Intimacy, and the author was describing the heart. That the more the heart gets something, it yearns for something, for it more. That he said that a heart is a deep, dark hole that can never be filled. Today, people who are walking on foot, barefooted, whenever they get something, they yearn for more. Whenever they get something, they yearn for more. Because you would assume that people who are stealing money in government, they've sold enough. One, for them to eat, for their children and their grandchildren. But I'm telling you, people want to own cities, people want to own whatever you can imagine for their own. So I don't think that poverty per se can be attributed to the corruption that we're seeing in this country. For God's sake, a poor man down there who is looking for survival is the one that is being stolen from. Someone was giving me an example that an officer, one of the police officers somewhere in Naguru, might be in need of money. He instructs these junior officers that go on the road, round up those borders and put them at CPS. So they go and get around 500 borders and put them at CPS. Whoever comes to pick his border, he has to pay 100,000 shillings or more.
The institution.
You understand? You understand? The senior officer somewhere who wanted around 200 million shillings, if you can get 500 borders, he can raise around 300 million shillings, and the officers can share the 100 million shillings so that the 200 can be taken to the big man. In other words, the poor people down there are not the ones that are stealing, but the rich guys.
Are these stories you hear from somebody else? Is it something you've witnessed, a police officer instructing others to do this operation? Because we are told the operations are against.
I said someone told me.
Someone told you.
So I cannot say that I witnessed this. But this is what is happening in this country. You understand? So the poor people are the ones that are being stolen from by the big people. So there is no way we can say that poverty per se has caused this kind of corruption in this country.
Maybe that will ignite a debate for another day. Time is not our best ally. I would allow Charity Ahimbisibe to do a wrap for us and perhaps give us the hope that we need as a country.
So the first hope that we need is to improve governance. There is a correlation between legitimate government, public use of resources, and public use of power. If you have power and you work for the government, or you are entrusted with public resources, you are supposed to push for accountability. It is just a requirement. It is not a thing you do to please someone. It is a requirement. We need to push for it. We need to live it, because that's the only way we secure our future. We secure our future by making strong institutions, by creating strong systems, and by having strong leaders. A strong leader can only work when the system is strong. But if the system is weak and the institutions are weak, they are corrupt, like we have just said, and the IGG even said that most of the people who are employed in public offices are not qualified for those offices. She again said that about 2-3 weeks ago. I've been wondering, the IGG, is she okay?
People have their degrees.
She has been saying they're not qualified for those offices.
Have their masters.
Now, if you see the IGG and what she has been saying, it's a clear example of we need to start somewhere. We have started with the Honorable Chitutu, but I urge government that even the other 22 ministers, even the ones who are saying they don't know how the iron sheets ended up, bring back those iron sheets. Mr.
Chifampa, your last word.
In a second, I just want to talk to someone, whoever is seated in a public office. Get to know that in the office in which you're seated in, there was someone who was seated there before. And after you, there will be someone who will sit there. You abuse that office, you've abused this country, you've abused the future of our children and our grandchildren. Uganda has to be here for so many years to come, past you. So please use that office in a proper way you're supposed to be using it. Mine, I still insist, as JEMA, we say we should be moral people. Morality is a big issue in this country. If we do not have morals, if we do not have values that to follow, we shall always have similar problems. I thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much. My guests, Siraji Chifampa Nsambu and Charita Mbisibe, for the perspective.
Chris, for the opportunity.
And like I said at the beginning of the show, that you use the resurrection of Jesus Christ and reflect, see what you kill within yourself, and then what you give an opportunity for rebirth. That should be the message that you take. Perhaps when you do that, a lot of us will be able to benefit from that goodness. We could also copy and take a leaf so that we become a better people. That will do it for our Kickstarter discussion. We were examining the crisis of politics and leadership in Uganda. As we close, let's do a little tradition of ours, and I would allow my guests to wish our camera person, one of our camera persons who usually is on the show, but right now he's in another task, Jose. There he is on the screen. Very handsome, promising young man. Happy birthday. I hope the stars can align themselves to your destiny, and that everything that you have wished for and the prosperity that you need comes your way, so you can become the best possible person you can be, away from the steed of the politicians that we've been discussing. Happy birthday. And that does it for this edition of Morning at NTV. It's been a pleasure, like always. I hope the week will be as fruitful as we all want it. No doubt we have been all washed with the blood of Jesus Christ. And for those that are within the holy month of Ramadan, there is a lot that is going on in terms of purification of the spirit and the soul. I'm Chris Higgeny on behalf of the entire team. Have yourselves a lovely day and indeed a great week ahead.